Okay. Wait.
Know where it is. He'll need it. Do you need to test this? Oh, sounds good. It's okay. Yeah.
All right, let's try this though. An F, right? I think everything's good.
Great.
Okay, I want to wear this top. It doesn't really. Yeah, Harry Cooper's
so funny. Shabbat Shalom, my friend.
Shabbat Shalom. Come on in and take a seat. Make sure you've got a prayer book. They're available on the cart right in the foyer.
Foyer. Should I take it off? Can't decide. She's not working. All right. We're having a talit issue.
Bring out our dressing, with or without. Without for tonight, it's okay.
Are you laughing at us? Oh, good.
Fantastic. We're going to begin on page 10, words of greeting, words of the greatness of this gathering. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad, how good it is to be together tonight.
Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is certainly good and pleasant to be together. It is nice to see, I think that's the sun outside shining today. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it in a while. Sun?
I think
that's
so.
What it's called? Yeah. It's weird to walk outside and not immediately be wet, which is also weird to say in Northern California. But nice to have the sun shining. The promise of spring seems to be on the horizon. I'm not going to say it's here, but it's on the horizon. And certainly our festival of spring is just a few days away. Passover, our Zman Cherutenu, our season of our freedom, is upon us, and it is good to be together tonight. So whether you're here for the first time, the 50th time, the 500th time, or anywhere in between, I'd love for you to turn right now to somebody that you did not walk in here with, and maybe ideally somebody that you don't know. Maybe say Shabbat Shalom to them, share your name, and maybe one sweet thing from this past week that you're bringing into Shabbat with you. Come back together. I want to point out as we come back together.
You got them chatting, Rabbi Heath. It's hard to get them to stop.
I know. I'm sorry. We'll come back together. Come back together. For those of you that maybe still need a little bit of a fidget, particularly our younger members, there are some Shabbat-friendly bags of games and toys that are nice and quiet that you can use during the service in the sanctuary. So they're right in the back corner there. But we're going to continue our service on page 2 or 120 as we light candles, bring a little bit of extra light into our midst this evening. I want to call up the family of our bar mitzvah, Rabbi Elman. So I'll call up Linda and Don Elman, Josh Elman, Marla and Norm Rabinovich, Howie and Debbie Snyderman, and Adam and Toby Elman as well.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik Shel Shabbat.
Ravi, I'll have you come over here and lead us in Kiddush, page 5 or 123.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereshit ki hu yom tehillah l'mikra'et kodesh zecher l'tziyat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'atanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hichaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Amen.
L'chaim. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Thank you.
We'll continue our service now. We welcome Shabbat into our midst as if she were a bride. Page 20 or 138, we'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9 of Lecha Dodi.
Shabbat,
heard that prayer of welcome. Want to make sure to welcome those of you who are joining us virtually, who are streaming. We all sort of just had a chance to face you and maybe wave a little bit. I see you now waving back, I assume. As well, we also extend a special welcome to those who have come from a house of mourning. We'll offer the traditional words of the Jewish people. Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch sha'ar avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort all those who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. And we continue our service with our call to worship, Baruch Hu. Sorry, page 26. We're going to continue with Chatzi Kaddish, page 26, or 144. Continue on page 28 or 146 with words of Baruch Hu. On side A of the song sheets that are maybe in the seat backs, hopefully, or one nearby, we're going to sing our chant for Ma'ariv Aravim, our prayer for the evening, Roll into Dark. It's number 2 on side A.
Tonight,
152, sing words of Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Shem kevod malchuto le'olam va'ed.
You can be seated. We're on page 36 or 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם amen. On page 40 or 158 as we sing Michamocha tonight,
All right, let's see.
see
This is
if
a very
you
ancient melody. It
recognize
goes like
this
this.
melody.
That was Albany. It was a mix-up. Adonai Yaakov, Ugalom Yad Chazak Mimenu, Baruch Atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
We turn to page 42 or 160 as we sing our nighttime prayer, the words of Hashkivenu. We imagine a shelter of peace spreading over us, over Israel, over all the world. Let's sing together.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Eloheinu shoreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, Eloheinu shoreinu lechaim.
turn the page, remind ourselves of why we're here, the words of Vishamru, the gift of Shabbat. Turn to page 46 or 164 as we enter into the Amidah, our standing prayer. And as is our custom, we will chant the first few blessings together and then have time for quiet. When you're finished with your personal prayer, you can be seated. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Hanora Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei Hakol V'zocher Chasei Avot V'imahot U'mevi Geula Livnei Bneihem Leman Shemo V'yahava Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mechayel hakol atah rav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem. Mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim verofeh cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar. Michamocha bal gerurot umidom melach, melech memit umechayek umatzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman atah lachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God.
We're on page 339, the second song down. This has been a difficult week in the land of Israel. We're reminded that even when it gets shaky and narrow, we still have to cross that bridge. We're going to do it together, so. Gesher along this very narrow bridge, I will not be afraid, knowing you are with me. As I walk along this very narrow bridge, I will not be afraid, knowing you are near. Ve'ha'ikar, ve'ha'ikar, la lefachet klal, la lefachet. Ve'ha'ikar, ve'ha'ikar, la lefachet klal, la lefachet. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od. Kol ha'olam hu gesher tzar me'od.
Our thoughts now turn to those who are in need of healing, healing of body, healing of spirit. And tonight we are especially holding in our hearts Jerry Behar, Susan Carlson, John Devine, Rudy Andrizi, Norma Etten, Marty Gelman, Selena Glader, Valerie Goss, Diana Guthoner, Moritz Huppert, Ryan Jasinski, Donald Korn, Jordan Leon, Sophia Palisban, Peter, Rabbi Lori Phillips, Peggy Pizzo, Margie Richards, Charlie Rothschild, Roberta Rudman, Stephen Abraham Simon, David Baruch Ben Simona, Larry Wertman, Len Williams, and Katie Wilson. If there's someone else that you're praying for, please share their names with us aloud. Turn to page 253 or 371 in the middle of the page, our prayer for healing.
I moved to Jerusalem for my first year of rabbinical school on July 4th, 2006. Just 2 weeks after Amy and I got married. Yes, she came with me. And I should add that it was just a couple of months after graduating from the School of Jewish Communal Service. I say that because my teacher, Steve Windmuller, is here tonight. And I actually still remember that we watched the fireworks over Manhattan as we took off from Newark Airport that night. About a week later, the Second Lebanon War erupted along the northern border. It was a complex time to be in Israel. On the one hand, there was an active war being fought in the north, just a few hours away from Jerusalem, with displaced residents from the north setting up temporary shelters in the parks of Jerusalem. But on the other hand, much of our lives as HUC students went on in a rather normal fashion. We went to classes at HUC every day, working on our Hebrew and getting oriented to this country in which we would live for the next year. It might go without saying, but it was certainly an interesting way to spend our first year of marriage. An ongoing war also meant that my personal connection to Israel advocacy took on a new shape. Every night, I'd talk with my parents who couldn't understand why the school wasn't immediately getting us on the next flight home, or why I wasn't more insistent on leaving immediately. I shared with them the perspective of the Israeli HUC administration that we were hearing on a daily basis. We were safe in Jerusalem, and the war was all the way up in the north. For my parents, the thought of a war with captured soldiers and rockets and tanks being fought just a few hours north of my location was unthinkable. Imagine how we'd feel here on the peninsula if there was a major violence along our border with Oregon. For the Israelis around me, I think there really was a sense that the violence and danger, at least for the time being, was concentrated in specific known places. And unless the violence expanded into Jerusalem, there was no need for Jerusalemites to panic unnecessarily. What I learned in that first summer, and that has stayed with me always, is the complexity of understanding what it is to live inside of Israel versus outside of Israel. To see and understand what goes on in Israel as an Israeli versus a non-Israeli. There are many within the pro-Israel camp who, to this end, argue that we as American Jews, as those living outside of Israel, ought to stay out of Israel's politics and allow Israel's citizens to work out whatever issues the country faces, be it internal political disagreements around the governance of civil society, security, or other domestic issues. There is a sense of hesitation among many of us to critique Israel or her government from the outside. But in this moment, in which hundreds of thousands of Israelis are engaging in nonviolent protests in streets and town squares across the country of Israel, this is not the moment for silence. Israelis from all walks of society, young and old, men and women, members of the LGBTQ plus community, IDF reservists, are protesting the current government's attempts to pass legislation that would exert new control over the nominations process to the Israeli Supreme Court and potentially give the Knesset the power to override the rulings of the Supreme Court as well. And in this moment, they are asking us, the members of the Jewish diaspora, to support them and speak out on their behalf. On Thursday morning, the Union for Reform Judaism offered a briefing webinar with leaders of the U.S. and Israeli reform movements who have been at the front lines of many of these protests. It was striking to listen, along with over 1,200 other Reform Jews on the call, to Rabbi Gilad Kariv, who is the former head of the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism and a current member of Knesset, urging American Jews to raise their voices. He warned of the dangers of this legislation, which threatens to leave Israel without a system of checks and balances, threatens the fundamental civil rights of Israelis, and threatens the core values of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. Rabbi Kariv called this a battle of Zionism, a battle for Israeli Judaism, and a battle for democracy, and explained that these protests are about fighting for Israeli identity and culture, not just a legislative battle. As someone who is in the rooms where these conversations and arguments are taking place, He warned that the ultra-Orthodox Knesset members of the coalition see these changes to the governance system as a pathway to bring about more religious-based laws in Israel. And their ultra-nationalist partners see this as an opportunity to pave the way to unilaterally annex contested areas. Rabbi Kariv and the other Israeli leaders acknowledged that the letters of concern that have been sent in the past few weeks from Jews all over the world to Prime Minister Netanyahu, to members of the Knesset, to our Israeli consulates, and to our government representatives have had a direct influence on achieving the government's current, albeit temporary, pause on this legislation. Last week, in an interview with Haaretz after his last-minute trip to the United States, Rabbi Kariv said, "The Reform community in the United States all understand how critical the current developments are, but we still need to encourage them to be active. I'm glad we're seeing more of these institutions and individuals taking a stand." He said, even if the current coalition completes the proposed legislation, the huge civil protest in Israel and the pressure from around the world will make it more difficult for the government to move forward with its other plans. If we lose the battle in the coming weeks, it's just one of many. The war will continue. We need the protests in order to make them think twice before opening another front. Kariv adds that there is a very important role for Jewish American communal and political leaders. If central figures are quietly signaling to senior ministers that this creates challenges for U.S.-Israel ties, if an Israeli minister is getting a call from a prominent member of Congress saying, "You need to revisit this," it encourages the Israeli legislature to think if something else should be done. The coming 2-3 weeks will be crucial, he concludes. Even though Prime Minister Netanyahu has agreed to a temporary pause, there is still much uncertainty about what will come next. And this week we've also begun to see far-right protests that have included concerning violence and dangerous rhetoric. A couple of years ago, Rabbi Daniel Hartman offered what is, I think, a helpful framework for thinking about the complexity of being a liberal Zionist in this moment. He talks about the challenges of being a Zionist today as a 2x2 matrix. On one axis is commitment. How committed are you to the idea that Israel should exist as a safe Jewish state? The other axis he calls troubled. To what degree are you bothered by some of the actions of Israel or the Israeli government? He warned that too many young people today are in the bottom left corner, untroubled and uncommitted, not really thinking too much about what goes on. That there's dangerous territory as well in being committed but untroubled. That you're committed to the idea of a Jewish state, but aren't necessarily concerned with the moral or ethical things that go on in that country. Hartman doesn't see being troubled as a bad thing. In fact, he thinks it is an essential form of engagement. As he explains, to be a Jew is to be troubled, to view one's life and one's society through an aspirational lens, always striving to be more. He says, I'm troubled because this project is an ongoing process that requires constant revision. I'm troubled by the enduring gap between ideals and reality. For Hartman, the ideal form of engagement with Israel is to be troubled and committed, highly committed to the Zionist project and the importance of a Jewish state, but concerned and engaged when Israel or its government isn't living up to the ideals set forth by her founders. I love Israel deeply and dearly. I have lived there. I direct my heart and my prayers towards Jerusalem whenever I pray. I believe passionately in the need for a safe haven, a homeland for the Jewish people, in which we get to create a society based on the highest ideals and ethics that Judaism offers, that Israel is a place in which Jews have the right to self-determination. But it is not always easy to love Israel. And just like any loving relationship, we don't always see eye to eye. But I remain committed to the ideals that our Israeli brothers and sisters have spent the last many weeks protesting in the streets, reclaiming the symbol of the Israeli flag and crying out to save democracy. These Israelis from all walks of life are calling on the current government not to lose sight of the ideals expressed in Israel's Declaration of Independence, to foster the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants, based on freedom, justice, and peace as envisaged by the prophets of Israel, to ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex, to guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture, and to safeguard the holy places of all religions. As Americans and as American Reformed Jews, we have more power than we sometimes realize. And when we raise our voice from a place of troubled commitment, from a place of love for Israel and a hope that she is living up to her highest ideals, we have the ability to effect real and powerful change. As we grapple with what is happening in Israel in these weeks, I encourage you to engage in some of these 4 actions. We mentioned these in our email to the congregation earlier this week. First, continue to educate yourself about what is happening in Israel. Be sure to read articles from multiple news sources. Number 2, support Israelis in Israel by giving tzedakah to those organizations fighting for democracy and civil rights, like ARTSA, the Association for Reform Zionists of America, the IMPJ and Iraq's Emergency Campaign, and maybe even the New Israel Fund. Third, advocate directly to your senators and representatives that they reflect your values on this issue when engaging with Israel diplomatically. And fourth, pray that the leaders of Israel implement the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice for all its citizens and inhabitants. Next week, we will gather around our Seder tables and retell the Passover story, a story of moving from narrow, restrictive places towards freedom, and a call for empathy towards all those who experience oppression. The images of mass protests and upheaval in Israel, likely some of the biggest Jewish gatherings since the Exodus, remind us that we must continue to fight for freedom and justice in our world, and to advocate for a free, fair, and democratic Israel. We pray that democracy in Israel will prevail, and that the high ideals upon which the state of Israel was founded will be upheld in partnership between her government and her citizens. I want to end tonight with this prayer for democracy, written by Rabbi Oded Mazor of Congregation Kol HaNeshama in Jerusalem. God of our ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah, bless those who stand in defense of democracy, equality, and peace, from among our people and those all over the world, who work to repair society in the face of the threat to the justice system and the rule of law. May the Holy One protect them and save them from all trouble and distress, and from every plague and illness, from all harassment and injury and any attempt to humiliate them and undermine their commitment, in the fight against indifference, inaction, and non-involvement. May their efforts be successful, and may they have a good eye to see wrongs done, a good heart so as not to stand idly by, and the strength to act to protect the rights of all, to do justice and bring peace to every person made in the image of God in the world. May the words of the Torah be fulfilled, for because of this thing, God will bless you in all of your efforts and in all of your undertakings. And let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
We turn to Words of Aleinu L'Shabeach on page 282. At the bottom of the page, please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו
ומשתחווים ומודים
לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 287.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
Please be seated. Just want to call your attention to our tzedakah box, which is in the foyer. In addition to the wonderful organizations that Rabbi Heath mentioned, the IRAC and ARTSA and the IMPJ, we're also this month collecting for one more day for our March tzedakah box recipient, the Association for Civil Rights in Israel. It's the oldest civil and human rights organization in Israel, founded in 1972. ACRI is the only NGO in Israel advocating across the broad spectrum of human rights and civil liberties for everyone living in Israel and the Palestinian territories. We encourage you to give generously, either here if you have money on you, or you can donate online on our website, or you can Venmo us at Beth-Am, I think, and we invite you to give generously. We prepare now for the prayer of memory. Page 290 or 594. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. I think for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me. Your laugh once lifted me. Your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. As I read the name of your loved one, if you'd like to rise in their honor, please do. Then we'll have a chance to share other names of those that we have lost, and then we'll recite the words of Kaddish together. This week, the Beth-Am community mourns the loss of Irene Shanes, sister of Barbara Stevens, sister-in-law of Charles, aunt of Lorraine and Joel Brown, and Gloria and Steve Carlson. And Lucia Cassius, our member. We also mourn the tragic loss of life this week at Covenant School in Tennessee. We're observing Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning, for Barbara Tenari, Bob Gregg, Ruth B. Kaufman, Bernie Marcus, Moises Mishkin, Eileen Gleason, Maxie Rivkin, Joyce Scherer, Leonard Frank, Beth Reed, Denise Zioni, and Amy Sims. And we remember those whose yahrzeit, whose anniversary of death fall this week: Betty Blum, Richard Anthony Busey, Paulina Chalfin, Raphael Churgin, Nathan William Citron, Howard Cohn, Albert Davidson, Georgiana Weitzel DiFilippo, Gail DeMeo, Marion Diller, Alfred Dubinsky, Pam Emerson, John Flaxman, Mildred Fogel, Dr. Irwin Gainan, Labe Gelfand, Rabbi A. Bruce Goldman, Bernard Greenwald, Gladys Gross, Sarah Cohen Groen, Marga Grunwald, Helen Hallert, Charles Hennick, Ethel Hewer, Arthur Hill, Patricia Hodges, Bassa Kaplan, Harvey Carlin, Joseph Kuman, Abba Hozioski, Helen Kirsch, Herbert Klein, Manuel Lauber, Isaac Lerner, Milton Levinson, Rosalind Lifton, Alex Light, Ludmila Livshitz, Shirley Loeb, Tilly Mandel, Irving Miller, Kiyoshi Morita, Nancy Packer, Yehuda Perry, Shirley Personette, Miriam Polish, Sala Price, Miriam Resnick, Neville Rich, Louis Rawson, Peter Salzer, Doris Salzer, Dreza Samuel, Robert Sachs, Shirley Shevik, Hilda Slotnick, Louis Smerling, Samuel Soffer, Aurelio Howard Sturp, Aaron Strenger, Ruth Tarnopolsky, Chaya Turkanitz, our Cantor Emeritus, David Unterman, Abram Vilgo, David Wasserman, Grace Wedden, Harold Usum, and Jean Gruberman Zlotnick. If there's someone else you're missing tonight, please rise and share their names with us. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. We turn to page 294 or 598. If you're able, please rise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirute v'amlich malchute, v'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal, shemei dekudsha barichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbichata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'romav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Together we say.
Page 338 or 642, we join together in Adonai Oz.
Are we going to do it? Okay. And we will close with the words of Adon Olam, page 321 or 625.
I
Shabbat Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Chag Sameach.